When humanity was first encountered, they were below the standard of galactic consciousness, below the need for anyone to care. They lagged behind us in terms of tech, weaponry, colonization, and economic prowess. When we first found them, they were more excited to meet us than we were to meet them. They were, after all, beneath our notice. We exchanged information, settled borders, and even had an issue where they colonized a planet within someone else's borders. They resolved it peacefully and simply walked away, deciding to abandon the planet and system entirely, resettling somewhere else instead of potentially starting a war. We decided not to investigate further and simply left them alone. This turned out to be a bad idea. So here is a precursory note before the story even begins. We as a galaxy have all but abandoned so-called analog modes of warfare. All battles are done by gigaton capacity laser technology and shielding. Giant warships with heavy lasers that can strike targets at up to 250 miles. Ranges that are considered the standard for any form of modern battle. This is due to how prohibitive most weapon systems are. Ballistic munitions require powder primers and other such things that aren't very safe. Munitions that cause more damage to the ship than they can inflict on the enemy, if the enemy gets lucky, or knows what they are doing. It's also impossible to manufacture such things in space unless you have a craft with its own refinery and manufacturing facilities, which aren't very economical in large ship fleets. Railgun technology was also phased out by the community. Gauss tech even more so, for similar reasons. The energy weapons, lasers, masers, and pulse laser tech simply outweighed other options. Some empires use railguns but focus almost entirely on laser technology, especially modern armaments such as the Emperite's primary turbo maser batteries that can vaporize a city block. In short, the galaxy has a reliance on laser weaponry, short or long range, and it's all to do with economics and industry. It's not that we can't, it's that it's too expensive. Lasers offer a better, more honourable, more economically viable option. Fuel is also not a real concern when you have a laser-based ship. Hydrogen fusion reactors and other such technologies can be scaled up to almost any size, and when looking for fuel for these systems, simply wandering about in the universe can keep you fueled for millennia. An easier option, even than that, is to simply find a local gas giant, skim some gas off the top, and keep yourself full of all the fuel you can need for the next year. Even at full power, a modern dreadnought only uses a few gigawatts worth of energy, simply due to the fact these systems run with efficiency in mind. Battles and fights use up more energy, of course, but when fights last only a few hours at most, due to the energy and damage output, thanks to the gigantic superweapon quality lasers, it doesn't mean much in the long run. Then come the humans, who barely use lasers for anything above point defense. Human ships are, for basic classification, around roughly twice the size of the Galactic standard. They have a significantly larger class roster than we do, but in terms of crew complement, economy and whatnot, we are on relatively even ground. In terms of their shielding capacity, they are slightly below average. In terms of armor plating, slightly above average. And in terms of weapon quality, average. What we didn't account for was humanity and their insanity. We didn't count for a species that had no chill, according to them. Neither did the Skakandi pirates. History lesson. The Skakandi pirates were, emphasis on were, a race of barbarian pirate raiders who raided, stormed, pillaged, and stole in order to survive. Typical warrior-like species. Although very, very limited in number, mostly confined to scattered asteroid bases in far-flung systems, they were a serious threat to anyone they encountered. They have been plaguing the galaxy for several decades, their largest fleet only around 40 or so ships, but containing sufficient weaponry to pose a serious threat to an unaware force of any reasonable size. Enter humanity, and the TSR Cassandra's Revenge, a single missile cruiser protecting one of their colony worlds. Missiles. a point of contention that the galaxy had abandoned just before leaving their home systems due to multiple constraints. Missiles used their own fuel to fire, had limited capacity for ships as they were large, requiring a significant portion of any ship's volume to store. They also required various conveyance and secondary systems, pipe networks and hazardous storage bays in order to be used in any capacity. They were just too much to handle long term, so most military forces and empires simply began to phase them out of existence. Missiles very quickly became far too limiting for most people to use, so were almost universally abandoned by all but the most stubborn of races, and even so always used in a very limited capacity. Missiles themselves were also of limited use in modern battle, owing to better shielding technology and better laser tech that could shoot them down. Missiles were prohibitively expensive in every way we could measure, so they were universally abandoned for cheaper, stronger, and more effective methods. Humans apparently didn't know this fact. So how shocking was it for the galaxy to come to the understanding? Humans had dedicated, fully operational, and battle-proven warships, whose entire weapons complement consisted of missiles and rockets. The Skakandi had the biggest shock of all of us when they decided to raid a human colony world for food supplies. Thinking it was an easy battle. Turns out, the battle lasted exactly 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Skakandi warships don't exactly have the range advantage in the galaxy, their flagship having the best range with its Mesa cannon at 180 miles. That meant nothing. They appeared in the system and demanded tribute or torture. They often used torture to extort victims into more food or fuel. The human garrison responded in kind, with a missile barrage. Normally, missile barrages consisted of maybe 50 or so projectiles, launched from 10 or so ships, followed by laser fire. More as a method of intimidation or distraction, rather than an actual means to damage an opponent. The Cassandra's Revenge fired over 800 missiles in 3 consecutive volleys, and nearly 2,000 miles in range. By the time the Skakandi pirate fleet knew what was about to hit them, it was far too late. They bullied their way straight into a missile swarm, and in the blink of an eye, half the fleet was gone. This is partly due to the fact they had their shields down on approach, saving energy capacitors for full engagement, as is the standard. They realized they were outmatched, but being the warriors they were, they wouldn't surrender, and continued their advance. Right into the second volley of missiles. Having shields built exclusively to defend against lasers, the energy fields did basically nothing against the missiles, who wiped out the rest of the fleet, severely damaging the flagship. The Skakandi finally realized their mistake and decided to retreat. Volley number 3, however, hit them hard at that point, and that was the end of it. Sounds simple enough, isn't it? The humans just responded with overwhelming numbers of munitions, just like any fleet would, and it basically won them the battle. Not so. It's a lot more complex than that. A lot more. Firstly, not only do humans have the industrial capacity to field warships with thousands of missiles, they also have more than one type of munitions. Lasers and other such energy weapons deal a combination of electromagnetic or thermal damage to a target. The energy spike from a sudden directed burst of energy causing damage to electronics, the heat from the energy causing damage that melts or evaporates armor plating. Shields either deflect or absorb that energy burst, depending on the type, and shut down if the energy they face is too great. Everybody knows this. Human weaponry is a combination of basically every type of damage you can imagine. Let's use their missiles for basic understanding, and you can connect the dots themselves. Each missile carries a payload, yes. A warhead that carries the part that does the damage. The rest of the galaxy uses 2 types of damage, as previously stated, and very rarely the other 2. Humans use 7. 7! And of those 7, the galaxy has no resistance of any kind, even in terms of shielding, to 3 of those 7. You have the 4 basic types of damage and resistance. Granted, this is about as simplified as I can make it, and I apologize for treating you like an infant in my descriptions. But I don't have a millennium to take you for a course on starship construction, do I? Electromagnetic, thermal, kinetic, and explosive. Electromagnetic affects electronics. Thermal melts things. Kinetic hits things, and explosive explodes things. Simple enough. Humans apparently have an extra 3 damage types, which are ion, nuclear, and plasma. Ion is a significantly more dangerous variant of electromagnetic damage in that it uses a highly concentrated burst of ion-charged energy particles to blast a target with so much electrical energy it effectively fries anything it touches. Nuclear? Well, you know what nuclear weapons are, obviously, and humans have these things called thermonuclear warheads, which are essentially a nuclear warhead used to detonate a much bigger nuclear warhead. Yes, it is indeed insane, but they don't seem to care. Plasma is an odd one because it is a mechanism we don't fully understand yet. Apparently it superheats a bolt of solid metal or composite alloy of some kind, then fires this bolt at high speed. It's sort of like taking a flaming hot ball of metal and flinging it at something really, really fast. Depending on the composition of the bolt, it can either ionize this target, causing electrical failure, or explodes, both melting through armor plating or causing an explosive force. Or all 3, if the gun that fires it is big enough, apparently. Missiles can use all or multiple of these warhead types, and these insane apes have figured out how to combine some of these warheads. A nuclear ion torpedo, for example. It impacts, disabling shields, overloading them, then milliseconds later blows you the heck up with a nuclear bomb. A so-called heat or high-explosive anti-tank warhead will hit a target with force and use explosive force to send a kinetic projectile into a target, something that was incredibly efficient. You get the idea. Why is this relevant? Simple. Industry. How, you ask? The galaxy at large favours quality and durability above quantity, almost in every metric. Starships and the fleets, systems and logistics are expensive and difficult to do, especially on a large scale. Ship fleets in the galaxy average a number of 100 or so for small empires and defense fleets, while larger empires can fill fleets of over 1,000. Depending on size, let us use the standard battleship as a baseline. That it takes 6 months from start to finish, excluding resource collection and refining, to build one mid-range battleship class vessel. Now, human warships are twice the galactic average, as previously stated, so human battleships in their own terms require twice the resources to complete. Our ships are custom-made to a standard template in accordance with hull design and basic operations, but that is where the similarities end. Part of design principle is to have a standard outer shell design, fitting with the aesthetic and functionality, as well as size. When a ship is commissioned for construction, the design goes over several manufacturers until the council finds the one they prefer. The interiors are always different, in order to make sure that any attempts at boarding action will never be the same. It's also a matter of weapons, propulsion and shields. Ships will modify their interiors based on the systems mounted to the hull. A bigger main cannon will result in the interior shifting to accommodate. Larger propulsion, more cannons, more access. Larger reactor, more shielding arrays. Etc. You get the basic principle. Humans don't follow this principle. At all. They have a system of standardization, of course, but it's a lot simpler. It takes us 6 human months to build one battleship-class warship, on average. Equivalent starship sizes in terms of the galactic average, the closest warship to human battleships is one of their patrol cruisers. It takes them only 2 days to build one of these ships. I will say again, it takes us 6 months to build one battleship. It takes them 2 days to build one ship of equivalent size. You may stop reading in order to remove your freshly dislocated jaw, or its anatomical equivalent, from the floor. Humanity has the advantage over the entire galaxy due to this one simple factor. It's not that they have missiles that have the edge over us. is the fact they can manufacture millions of missiles and the ships that use them in short order. That missile cruiser I told you about? It was a small variant used for colony defense by locals. It carries a payload of 15,000 missiles. It only used a volley of 800 to defeat the largest pirate force in the galaxy. It probably only needed to launch half of that to fight. Humans have since tripled the size of their effective fleet strength since the first incident with the Skakandi, fearing further entanglements from the galaxy's denizens. The Skakandi attack was 3 months prior to the publishing of this piece. In 3 months of us sitting on our asses, trying to figure out what happened, humanity has officially announced that their entire military now actively outnumbers the galaxy at large 2 to 1. This means that in the time it took you to receive and read this missive, humanity has built 15 times more ships than we have in the last 20 galactic standard years. I found out how and why. Humans, as stated, have no chill. This means that they are from a high-grade death world. This is pretty obvious, as most species in the galaxy are. They have an obsession with logistics and production. Their mining ships gather resources at twice the rate, often using highly risky methodologies that we have long since abandoned due to safety concerns. Humans have all but perfected these methods. Human star systems are not as well populated as it seems, because some of the lesser worlds are systematically strip-mined to the core for resources, then shipped in some of the most advanced logistics systems seen in galactic history. Dedicated cargo ships, operating in specialized slipgates, that allow these ships to pass through slip space from one point to another instantly. We all know the slip space system, but humans industrialized it to an absurd degree. Their gates can allow any fleet of any size to simply wander through, crossing half the galaxy in mere seconds. Then there are the so-called Forge Worlds, entire planets dedicated to the processing and distribution of these resources. These Forge Worlds are entire planets that are being converted into enormous factories, industrial production facilities, and manufacturing hubs, each one a true marvel of engineering in their own right. Our ships have resources delivered to shipyards. Then a skilled team of artisans, craftsmen, smiths, and engineers manufacture everything on site. With humans, their ships are built via the process of logistics. Parts, pieces, and components are all built according to a standardization template. These parts are then loaded and shipped to shipyards orbiting Forge Worlds. Then these parts are assembled on a factory line. In a tenth of the time and effort it takes us, despite the fact humans use about as much automation as we do. What does this mean for us, though? It means that they have the economic industrial manufacturing capacity to outpace the entire galaxy while maintaining a reasonable quality of product. Which means they can easily bankrupt us if they find out by flooding the market with cheap but still decent goods. It means if we try to engage them in warfare, not only do they outrange us and outgun us, they can replace any losses tenfold in a tenth of the time. The tech they have for warfare baffles strategists, and even if we manage to get in range, we will win the battle, but with catastrophic losses. Which means that fighting them in almost any engagement will be a waste of time, resources, and most importantly, manpower. It means that if one of us gets to humans first, they now have a distinct advantage over anyone and everyone else. Humans are desperate for an ally in the galaxy, or a friend. Anyone who takes advantage of this fact will gain direct access to their industry and military. This will leave this empire to weave whatever narrative they want, to convince humanity that their empire needs to expand, and those who aren't allies will be the targets. In short, humanity is poised to become the central point in galactic politics, has the ability to bankrupt us in a matter of months, can outnumber us 100 to 1, outclasses us 50 to 1, and can fill the largest navy ever assembled in known history in a matter of a few years, if sufficiently provoked. Humanity presently represents an existential threat that we can't fight against. One we can't even hope to beat in any straight engagement or battle. Even if we send every ship that exists against them at once, We may win the war, and wipe them out with decent enough leadership, but our losses would be far greater than any potential gain for it. Their weapons can engage at far greater range than we can. And even if this range advantage wasn't a factor, they have the industrial capacity to manufacture enough of these weapons to make us suffer disastrous losses in any battle. If the range and number were not a factor, we might have stood a chance, were it not for their strange obsession with mixing and creating new weapon types. With these weapon types alone, they can match us without the numbers on any battlefield. And this is calculated using only our strategies and tactics, as we do not know how they fight in a real conflict. It is therefore my request to any and all who read this missive. Humanity is the future of the galaxy. If you don't side with them, you will be left behind. Make friends with them. Make trades with them. But if you will do anything, do not piss them off. Regards, Corax Lorfrak of Clan Takar Imperium, newly made vassal state of the Terran Confederacy.